What is up, everybody? My name is Patrick Jones, and I am the host of the Patrick Jones Baseball Podcast. I'm a former hitting coach in the Baltimore Orioles organization, and now I work with hitters in Cincinnati, Ohio, which in my background is my cage. I work with high school, college, professional hitters. I help baseball players with college recruiting and help guide them in that process. And I also host this podcast, and we have a great episode today. The episode is with Brady Kirkpatrick. Brady, when we recorded this episode, was the pitching coach at Florida Atlantic University. And then a week later, after we got recording it, he got the job at Duke University as their pitching coach. So I'm not taking any credit, but I'm just saying, the podcast was literally out for a week, and then he became Duke's pitching coach. So there you have it. But Brady's a great guy. You'll love him when you hear him in this episode, and he's a smart guy. We're actually the same age, and he has some really good insight and experiences as a player. He pitched at University of Maryland. He pitched and professionally for a little bit too, and then he's coached a little bit everywhere. Before Florida Atlantic University, he was at Harvard, and so he's been around a little bit, even though he's a pretty young guy, but he's very progressive, and he's a smart pitching guy. So hope you enjoy this one. Please help us out, help us grow this channel, and subscribe below. Hit the subscribe button below. If you have any comments, put them in the comments section. And lastly, if you enjoy the show, please share it with somebody. That's how we're going to continue to grow this thing, reach more people, and impact more players. So hope you enjoy this one. Please share the show. And here we have Brady Kirkpatrick. All right, we now welcome on Brady Kirkpatrick, who is the pitching coach at Florida Atlantic University. Brady, thanks for coming on the show today.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me, Patrick. Look forward to it.
The recruiting season is in full go now, and it's June. What's it like now that you're out on the road recruiting? In the summertime, are you doing something every single day when regards to recruiting? Are you still able to, coach at all? What's kind of the landscape in the summertime for a Division I college coach?
Yeah, I'd probably say you're doing something every single day. If it's not out on the road watching games, it's prepping for tournaments. It's, kind of digesting what you saw on previous weekend with, the guys you went out and saw, and trying to maybe keep a schedule together of guys that you want to see throughout the summer. Especially these first couple of weekends of being able to go out, almost, double checking some guys that are on our list, but also adding guys to our list. It's just getting names, maybe if it's guys that can come to our prospect camps that we want to see more in person. We can work with them on the field during our prospect camp. So it's just trying to identify some of the guys that we want to go after or that we've been currently on, and kind of cross-checking them. But yeah, it's usually something every single day. If it's not in the office, on the computer, we're lucky enough, there's enough baseball going around, our area. We can just get in a car and go up to, Palm Beach, go up to Jupiter, go over to Fort Myers. That makes it easy, but a lot of times it's making sure that we're organized enough to we know what we're going, and we know, who we're going to see. And then also now with the transfer portal and, us bringing in, junior college players too, it's also, we going out and watching a few summer league games as well. So it's not just high school guys that we're on now. It's a little bit more work on our end, having to, go look at, college kids now, but it's a busy summer.
How do you identify players who you want to look at in the transfer portal? I think I saw Kendall Rogers tweet out there's over 2,200 players in there now. So that would take a lot of time to be able to decipher through all their statistics, and who would you want to go see? Do you have a system for that, or is it just word of mouth?
Some of it's word of mouth, or we can see, we have access to the portal. We can see what kids go in it, and a lot of times it's maybe kids that we've known from the past. Maybe they're Florida kids that went off and played somewhere else, or if it's a player that we might have played against throughout the year, we're seeing something on. And then it circles back to what our needs are. I think the transfer portal, and same thing with the junior college players, it's not a long-term fix for us. It's maybe a year-to-year need that we might need to go after. So, let's say we might have someone drafted this year, and the draft is a little bit later this year. So that can kind of hurt us too, just because we don't have much room after it to make decisions or bring other kids in. So I'd say more that the transfer portal than anything is more just kind of a Band-Aid. If something happens, someone gets hurt on our staff, someone leaves, on our team, we can go in and grab a graduate transfer, for a year, almost that rental type player that we can bring in. But a lot of times, yeah, it's filtering through positions and looking at stats, but a lot of times it's names popping up that we might have known from the recruiting process in high school, or we might have seen them play in college.
Is it ever a red flag though when you see someone in the transfer portal? Because I mean, I'm sure there's always a story as to why they're there.
Yeah, we definitely like to get into why they're in the transfer portal. I think it's a little bit more. We get into it with kids that haven't graduated. The kids that graduated have usually, they've been there for 4 years. They graduated with that degree, and maybe they want to get closer to home for their last year, or maybe something comes up. More along the lines of the kids that are getting in after their freshman and sophomore year. A lot of it is for the playing time, not getting the playing time they want. And then you run across some of them that just wasn't the right fit with, being away from home, being on a different campus. Maybe it wasn't something that they expected. And I think especially how the NCAAs work now with the limitations on unofficial and official visits, especially at an early age. Kids are committing to schools before they really even step foot on campus. So now they're getting to campus and they're not really knowing what to expect because they haven't gone through that process. So sometimes it's the more the younger kids in the portal. You'd have to do a little bit more digging on, making sure some of the red flags don't pop up where they're going to come here for a year and not like it. But there is the one-time exception to the transfer. So it's not like kids can go and transfer, place to place every year.
Right. You mentioned right before that, you guys had a prospect camp where you can actually work with the players. When is that? And I didn't know you're allowed to work with players at camps.
Yeah. So we have, we have prospect camps. We were going to run a junior college transfer one this summer, just didn't gain too much traction. A lot of kids are playing summer ball, but our high school prospect camps are really good. It is, we have one next week. Then we have a couple others throughout the summer. They provide us a really good opportunity because we can, since we're working them, it's a paid camp. Kids can come in, and we do a 1-day camp where we're doing instructions, we're doing some showcase, and then we're playing games as well. So it can be a long day, but it's a great opportunity for us to be, we're in uniform, they're in uniform on the field with them. If it's working with the pitchers in their bullpen setting, working with them on the game mound when they're playing, talking with them. We have other college coaches that attend to help work the camp from pretty much every level. So we have some, I think, junior college, from D3s and D2s from the area come as well. So if not, the players are maybe Division I caliber, or they want to explore different academic options. There's different options for them there. So it provides us a really good opportunity to work one-on-one with some of these kids that we wouldn't be able to talk to unless they reach out to us or they call us because they're younger. And then also in our camp, it gives a good opportunity for us to showcase our facilities and our campus. We do a campus tour within our camp. So, besides juniors and seniors, we wouldn't be able to do that with younger kids in high school if it wasn't a camp setting. So it provides us a good opportunity to show some of those younger kids what our campus is like, what we're like on the field, some things they might not get if they weren't there.
What's one of the things that when you watch younger pitchers, maybe specifically in high school, that like the lowest hanging fruit outside of velocity? I think everyone already knows that, the harder you throw, the better. But like, what's something that you see a flaw maybe from a lot of young pitchers that they don't necessarily work on enough, or something that you're going to have to implement when they get to campus?
I think the huge thing, especially younger pitchers, is command piece of it. At a younger age, you get so caught up in velocity, and a lot of times the velocity comes as you get bigger and stronger. So if you don't have velocity and you want velocity, you want to try to throw with velocity, a lot of times you're overthrown and you're not working on the command. So, I'd say, especially at a younger age, is not trying to do too much on the velocity side of it. More command the pitches. I personally think at an older age, velocity is easier to teach than command is to teach. So, if you have elite command as you get into college, it's easier to gain 1 or 2 miles per hour, especially with all the technology out there. How advanced the strength and conditioning has become. I think the velocity is easy to gain. You see everybody gaining velocity these days, but it's, I think, command piece at an early age. Also, I think it's athleticism, the piece of not just being a PO from a young age. I like it when you see a guy on the mound, but then you go see him play shortstop, you go see him play outfield. I think that's gotten lost in a lot of it. I think the specialization at an early age is hurting a lot of kids in their development too. Being able to go up on the mound and be an athlete up there and not having to, throw every 5 days and then go sit in the dugout and not do anything, not swing a bat, not move. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I see. If you have to point a finger out, to be the athleticism overall of some of the pitcher onlys, but also the lack of command at an early age.
What are some ways that you've been able to help pitchers improve their command?
I think a lot of it's the mindset, and I think a lot of it's mindset and confidence. If I ask some of our guys when they hit a spot, when they throw a fastball and they're hitting it on the outside corner, are you surprised that you hit that spot? Right? Some guys will see the pitch called, underneath the catcher's legs. It'll be called in. They'll throw a fastball away, and they have conviction and they know it's there. And then you have some guys that hit that spot and then have some sort of a little, they're surprised a little bit in their mind. Right. So how do we get to that point where they're not as surprised in their mind? They're, they're confident enough where they know where it's going. I think that's the big mental hurdle for guys, is having that confidence where they can see it and they can execute it. There's times where sometimes it is mechanical. Maybe the arm's late, getting up to a spot. Maybe, our front side slaps in a little bit. We're flying open. So I definitely think there's a mechanical aspect to it. Kind of how we treat it is on an individual basis, trying to, the first couple of weeks, guys are on campus, just try to gather as much information of how they throw, what their body is moving, maybe some deficiencies in their mobility. We like to do some range of motion testing to try to get a big picture of who they are as a pitcher before we really dive into any changes. Because sometimes it's as simple as moving a finger around on a ball that helps it be a lot more consistent in the zone. Sometimes it's that, changing a whole lot that they've been doing their whole career, their whole life of throwing. And that takes a little bit more time. That takes a little bit more of a process to do. And there's not one way to do it. You just kind of have to almost trial and error as you do it, but also give yourself enough time to make, if it's a big change, make that change. It's just not going to happen overnight.
How many times when a player comes in as a recruit, maybe as a freshman, there's mechanical work that you feel like needs to be improved for them to get time on the mound? Or at that time, are they already, pretty much, polished and just need to tweak a little bit, some things here or there?
Well, we'd like to get to the point where we don't have to do much with them if we're recruiting the right kids. So we don't want to go out and recruit a kid to come in that we're going to have to change around a whole bunch. And there's times that some of that stuff happens, especially when kids start maturing and they start getting to the weight room a lot more. Now they have a lot more power output that they're not used to pitching with. So they get into positions that they're not used to being in, and some of the mechanics start breaking down. So, if we're recruiting the right kids, we're bringing the right kids in, we don't need to make massive changes. I think it's to be small changes here and there to make them better. But I think, if we're bringing kids in and changing them around a bunch, I don't think that's beneficial to us as a program, but also to them as a kid. They've been thrown a certain way their whole life. So trying to have to bring them in and change them I think that gives out a message of, hey, we didn't like you who you were, so we're going to change you around.
Yeah,
because not everybody's different. If we had everybody on our staff thrown exactly the same way, we'd be probably pretty difficult to hit. So I think it's identifying what works well, what we think works well, and then along the way there'll be some mechanical changes we need to make based off of from them being 17 to 20 years old. Their body's going to be changing, so their structure of their body will change. So their mechanics might change a bit as well.
What's your take on incorporating, because I know you mentioned how important confidence is and conviction and throwing strikes and helping improve that. How do you go about helping them improve that? I mean, I know some people get into meditation and that type of a thing. I don't know if, is that too young still at the college level to get kids to focus on meditating and kind of the mental game?
No, I don't think there's a young enough age that they should be starting to do that. I think when you start doing it with younger kids, are they taking it seriously? Are they
Right.
really
Yeah. I
buying
guess that's what I
into
was
it?
referring to. Yeah.
But no, we do it with our guys. Especially our guys. We can only throw the ball a certain amount of time. So if we can rehearse it in our mind, if we can see ourselves doing it over and over again, and I think the one of the biggest things on being able to improve on something is the having the confidence in it. And a lot of times the confidence comes with the preparation and being organized and on top of it. So I think if you have the preparation in place, if you have the organization in place, it's easy to go out there and compete. But if you don't, if you have if you're doubting yourself of the preparation, doubting yourself of putting in enough work to get to that point, that's when it's very easy to lose confidence because you're not confident in the process of yourself getting there. But no, the meditation I think is a big part of it. But not only just to lay there and meditate, but it's also rehearsing situations, rehearsing outcomes. If you can see, we work with some of our guys have seen maybe the last 10 feet of ball flight, what it looks like going into the catcher's glove. So just small stuff like that where we're breaking it up in pieces, not just sitting there and thinking, okay, fastball away, I want to throw a fastball away, but actually what it really looks like, and how it looks like coming out of hand, how it looks like hitting the catcher's glove. So kind of just breaking it up in some of those pieces. I think it can benefit. It's not going to hurt. And, we can only throw the ball a certain amount of time every day, but we can constantly rehearse it. I tell some of our guys, if we're sitting in our hotel room before a game and we're, visualizing that, that 2-strike slider going from strike to ball, from them swinging over the top of it or running out of bat with it over and over again. And when we get on the mound the next day and that situation comes up, we might have not done it, the previous day, but we rehearsed it, 100, 200 times. So I think subconsciously we're more likely to make it happen because we've been there, we've been in that situation, either not physically, but we've been in that situation mentally.
Yeah, I think the visualization piece is so critical in sports. And I wasn't a pitcher, but I'm sure pitching just as much as hitting extremely important. How do you go about trying to help pitchers kind of figure out what pitches that they need to be needs to be in the repertoire, right? Fastball, slider, changeup. Is it just based on the movement of their fastball, and then that's kind of the second and third pitch are based upon that? Or like, how do you go about trying to? I know slider. Everyone seems like throwing a slider nowadays. Do you want all your guys throwing sliders, or how do you go about kind of helping them with that?
Yeah, I think it's individually based. I think the slider is the easy one. It's a more rip and rip pitch. It's a high intensity pitch. But I think as starting pitching, you need 3 pitches. And if you're going to be really good, is a fourth. Maybe it's a show fourth. But for starting pitching, it's fastball, changeup, then either a slider or curveball. I think really good starters have a bigger curveball that can kind of get hitters off a smaller slider. If we have a combination of that, to be really good. But a lot of it is identifying kind of what works well. We do a lot of stuff with video, where we can overlay the pitches and how they come to the plate, how hitters are seeing them. And some guys have that a lot of ride on their fastball, so it works up in the zone a lot more. Usually those are a lot more of closer to a 12-6, even like a 1-1-7 type curveballs where they have a lot more depth just because we work in that fastball in the top of the zone a lot more. So it's really just trying to sequence and almost pitch map of what pitches work well off each other. Some guys it's the 2-seam changeup, some guys it's the 4-seam changeup. I don't think hitters are good enough to pick up, the difference between a 2-seam changeup and a 4-seam changeup, especially if it's 8 to 10 miles per hour different. But we also get into the velocity of things. Straight changeups I think should be closer to 10 off our fastball, rather than if we have some sort of sink or a lot of run, a lot of movement to our changeup, it can be closer to that, the 7 to 8 miles off, just because it has a different planes to it. So I think it's identifying all that stuff with our guys and what pitches make them the best pitcher, rather than, it'd be nice to have everybody to have, that old Clayton Kershaw curveball. But not everybody can do it, and it doesn't benefit everybody based on what they throw and how they throw. So I think it's just trying to identify for relievers, 2 pitches will work well off each other, what they can be really, really good at, rather than being average at 3 coming out of the pen. They can be really good at 2. And then the starters have to have that, have to have that 3rd pitch and possibly even a 4th.
Do you call the pitches during the game?
I do. Yep. I call the pitches. We use catcher has an earphone in. I say them to him, but it's a constant communication throughout the game. I give all our guys the option too. We swipe, plus and minus up and down to get to pitches. And then we'll have conversations on them of why we went to that. I just think at a college level, where in the pros, there's 30 teams and you know exactly what, Mike Trout's weaknesses. You'll be facing him every time. Every lineup 1 through 9 of the guys. College baseball, our guys probably don't even know who they're playing the following midweek game. They don't know anything about their team. Sometimes, the best player won't even be in the lineup. So for them to work on schoolwork, getting to the baseball, everything else they have to do with it, they're not sitting on a plane going over scouting reports. They're going to class, they're going to school. So I know it's tough for us to think that, maybe a catcher can remember what their 7-hole hitter did the first pitch of the game, maybe 2 games ago. So it's just, that's why, I'm comfortable with doing it, calling the pitches, but it's a constant communication. There's times where the catcher will be like, hey, he moved up in the box a little bit. He's moving around. They have the best vantage point of what the hitter's doing and what might work. So we'll have conversations through it. But, I'll call every pitch, and then, the pitcher has the opportunity to change pitches. They don't do it a whole often, but it's more discussion based rather than, hey, this is what we're going. We have a plan going into it. So they're not surprised by, the majority of the pitches that are being called.
Yeah, I don't blame, any college coach for calling pitches. Hell, your job's on the line, right? And it's about winning, right? That's the difference between professional baseball a lot and college baseball, especially the minor leagues. It's all about development and if you win, great. If you don't, and everybody can say like, well, we want to win, but you're not really playing to win if you're told how many pitches each guy is throwing and where so-and-so sit in the lineup. So I definitely would be doing the same thing if I were you, calling all the pitches. Was this the first year that they used the earpiece, or did you guys have that last year too?
No, first year used the earpiece. Before, a lot of it was done on wristbands, giving numbers to the catchers, and they would look and do it. I think it's going to continue to develop, where you see the major league teams now having the little microphone in the hat that tells the pitcher and catcher what to throw. I think we might get to that point where from the dugout it's put into the catchers and they can see it. So I think it's going to constantly evolve, and I think it really helps our pace of play. I'm a huge component on getting on that mound and trying to throw a pitch every 12 seconds. If we can get under that, great. Especially if a hitter takes a bad swing, we want to get him in the box as quick as we can, so he can't process what he just did wrong or what he saw. And that's what the pitch comm and all that stuff is sped up the game and been able for us to work at a much faster pace.
What do you think? What's your take on reviews? I was at the Michigan-Oregon game down with the Louisville Regional not that long ago.
Yep.
It drives me nuts because, I like the review, but there needs to be somebody watching the game. So like you put the headset on and it's a yes or no right away, right? Yeah. Instead of taking forever. I don't know. That's like a fan in me, I guess, pet peeve. But I assume all over, I guess everywhere that all D1, you can review all games now, like any play.
So conferences, they did it specifically. There's, I want to say, just a handful of conferences that had it during the regular season. We didn't have it in Conference USA. I don't think the Pac-12 had it. I'm not sure if the Big Ten had it or not in regular season. But then, for conference tournaments, we had it. And then also every regional, super regional, World Series will have it. I think we're getting to that point. It's just the resources that, some of the mid-major schools that might not have all the video, it's counterproductive. You only have one video angle from up top to do it. But I think it's a way. I think it's helped. Especially there's been some really bad calls in college baseball, and I think especially at that highest level, when you have so much riding on a game, if they could do a little bit more to get calls right, I'm all for it, especially the reviews on the defensive side. I know sometimes it takes a little longer. I think they can get a little bit better at the review process of it. But I'm a big fan of it. I think it helps baseball, and it makes less coaches getting mad because now you have a yes or no. Like you can just go review it rather than having to review it. I think it's moved along, and I think it will hopefully continue to speed up the process of doing it. Get away from the 5-minute reviews where they can cut it down. So.
Are you a fan of the automated strike zone then?
I am not. No,
Okay.
I'm not a fan of the automated strike zone. I still a believer that that's part of baseball, and that's part of the game. I think that there should be ways to hold umpires accountable. Are they seeing their reports of pitches that they called stray pitches, all that stuff? I think there should be accountability on their end, but I also think that if we're looking back at it, and I do try to keep reports on umpires of what umpire gives a little bit more off the plate than not. So you certain days you might, we have Joe behind the plate, he gives just a ball off away to a right-handed hitter. Let's really work on that. So I think there's some strategy being played in it, but I think the inconsistency in itself can be helped by maybe creating a little bit of accountability on the umpires thing. But I'm not saying every pitch has to be in the zone, have to be right around it. I don't think if the automated strike zone, I think that's takes away a little bit of the the personality of the game, but also some strategy in the game.
The human element. I love the human element within the game. I think it's important to always keep that. What's something, Brady, that you learned as a pitcher yourself? Because I know you pitched. You were at Maryland. We talked about that. Last week when we talked on the phone. What's something that you learned as a pitcher that has helped you as a coach coaching pitchers?
Probably the biggest thing is, no one wants to go out there and fail, right? Everybody is wanting to succeed on the mound. And I think as a pitcher myself, everybody kind of learns differently. Some guys, they perceive information differently. They learn, some guys are visual learners. Some guys need to go out there and do it. Myself I just needed to go do it and do it in reps. And some guys need to see it first, see what it looks like, and then go do it. So I think having an understanding of that part of it, where finding the competitive guys that maybe learn the same way, but also understanding that everybody learns a little bit different. So I think that'd probably be a big aspect of it from what I learned when I was pitching. Sometimes I thought, just go out and do it, where other guys kind of learned a little bit different than I did. Didn't really notice it then, but as I kind of step back and start coaching, it's something that I've really noticed.
What's a way that you help players kind of understand and grasp what you want them to do, like on the field? Like, for example, on the hitting side, I like to use a lot of visuals, video, just because humans, it's easier for them, I feel like, to be able to connect the dots if they can visually see something. Is that something you utilize too when trying to get players to make some sort of change?
Yeah, no, I think it's the visual piece of it's big. A lot of guys are a lot more visual learners, just because they're constantly looking at their phone, constantly looking at different, watching baseball games, so they can see it happen before they're out there doing it. So I think it's for us, it's just understanding of how each guy learns to start off, like having that dialogue of communication where X player needs to see it first. So maybe it's I'm pulling something off the pitching ninja Dropbox, to showing them grips, like, hey, these are a few grips, let's try some of these out. And then it's other guys where A few of our pitchers are big feel pitchers, so they need to feel it happen first before they can really make the change. So it's trying to identify what type of pitcher learns in certain ways. But a lot of it, yeah, is visual. We need to kind of show them what it looks like, how it's supposed to look like, and then, have them do it, have them fail at it, so they know what it feels like not to do it. And then as they get moving forward, maybe they feel that less and less. That's kind of how we go about when we start to develop a pitch, develop something that is, okay, we feel what it feels like when it's really good. Let's get that feeling more and more. And then let's try to feel like, let's understand when it doesn't happen, when it works, not what we want to work on. Let's know what that feels like so we can have that feeling less and less. So I think when that stuff starts coming up, that's when some change can be made.
Do you have your guys write that down so they can remember what it feels like when they do it right, and then when they do it wrong too? Just I mean,
yeah,
like
we'll have it write down, but also we'll do video, and then we'll try to capture, the data. Like we'll have the Rapsodo out there every bullpen, so we really work on a pitch one day, and it feels really good. We'll have a video of how it was coming off the hand. We use the Edgertronic camera, so it's the super slow-mo camera, so we can see exactly how it's coming off the fingers, how we're holding the ball. And then also we have the metrics right there to back it up. So if we're in season or something comes up where that pitch isn't where we want it, or it's not where it used to be, we can jump back into that stuff. Like, oh, hey, look at our spin decreased this much, or it looks like we're holding the ball a little bit different. It's coming off this finger rather than it was coming off the other finger. So it's a lot of that stuff when stuff is going right is we try to gather everything, bring it all in, write it down, just so we can go back to it if something comes up or something's not feeling right.
We were just talking about how players learn differently from each other, and you talked about that yourself as a player. Do you utilize personality tests at all when trying to understand how your players learn and think and kind of their background information?
I haven't done any of the personality tests. There's some different stuff I did when I was at Harvard that kind of did that a little bit to see how they learn, how they interact. But going off that, I think a big part of it is trying to match up players with other players that learn in similar ways. I can tell a pitcher how to throw a certain pitch, how I threw it, right? But if that might not work from him, he might get information from somebody else. I remember playing summer ball one year, and for the last year I really worked on trying to throw a slider, and nothing really clicked on me. I went and played summer ball, and we had a left-handed pitcher that threw a really good slider, and he showed me how he did it, and that clicked for me. So it's just understanding there's not one certain way or one certain voice that can do it. It's just surround yourself with, I think it's good people, but also good players. Try to be around players that do it well and do it often. And I remember when I played, I would always talk to some of our best hitters, some of our best base runners. Hey, when you're at first base and you want to steal, what don't you like? Do you not like the long hold? Do you don't like sitting there for a while? Like, what gets you uncomfortable when you're there? So a lot of it was kind of feeding, different information off each other, bouncing off each other, just constantly wanting to learn and almost be immersed in baseball. I thought that was huge for my development when I was there, but even now is putting kids in that environment as much as you can. When you're on the field, it's talking baseball, talking different situations, not just telling them, hey, you have to do this, you have to do that, is letting them learn from themselves and understand situations, having the pitcher understand when the hitter might run on the base, what are the action counts, stuff like that can make them, almost a complete pitcher, but also just understand what's going on.
Yeah, that's great advice right there. Of immersing yourself, surrounded by people who are like you and think like you, and I'm really glad you shared that. Going back to the base running right there, what have you done, or what have you been able to do when it comes to like the jump steal? Like, are guys doing that in college? Because I know in professional baseball, guys who hit the shorter lead and then try to get a small jump and then go steal, and then if they don't get it, they just hop right back. Do you see that? And if you do, what remedies do you have for your pitchers to try to combat that?
Yeah, we see it not as much anymore as we did when we started. We have some pretty good things in place where that prevents it. Just small things like there's so much video out there now where we can see, hey, this team, they like to do the vault leads where they'll try to time it up and then take a step or jump off. And then, we'll put a pick in where as soon as the catcher sees that, he drops his glove and we pick the guy off of first base. So it worked a lot for us this last year when guys get really aggressive. We have plays in place to combat that. And especially in college baseball, and especially the way the ball is flying, especially this last year, no one wanted to run into outs. So, the start of this last year, we picked off 4 or 5 guys in the first, 3-4 weekends. So almost a guy, maybe 2 every weekend. And then after that, it got on the scouting report or got on video, and guys got on base and they don't want to run anymore. Our catcher throws really, really well, but also they don't want to run into an out just because they're sitting there, a pitch away from a 2-run, 3-run home run, just like that. So I think the college is getting a little bit closer to that pro style baseball where they don't run as much, they don't bunt as much. I think that's a lot of that's due to the way the balls were flying and how many home runs were hit this year.
You think they're going to change the balls for next year?
I don't know. I look at it and I think so. About 3 weeks ago, I looked into just some stats. And I think it was in 2014, the 50th best ERA in college baseball would be the second best this year. So there's been a big change. I don't know what it is, and that was still the new bats. It wasn't like that was the old bats then. I know the balls have changed since then. You can definitely feel the changes, and the laces got smaller. They're more like a professional minor league baseball. But I don't know if it's the bats being made a little bit differently now, but there's definitely something there. I think part of that is now we can, like I talked about earlier, the umpires are now seeing, and it's all over Twitter, of bad calls. So I think the zones are getting a little smaller for the pitchers. I don't think the high strike is getting called as much, definitely as much as it does in MLB. So I think that adds to it, but I definitely think there's something when you can look and you can see that drastic change in stats. I remember when I think it was 2013 when I think UCLA was hitting 250 and they made the College World Series. I think they won it just because they were allowing 1-2 runs a game. So I don't think we're in that type of baseball anymore. It used to be the best teams that maybe got to Omaha could really hit. Maybe 1 or 2 of them could really, really hit their way there, but they never had a chance at it. It was the teams that could pitch and play defense that took over. And I think you're starting to see the other side of that now.
Yeah, that's a interesting stat you brought up there. 50th best ERA would be the second best 2014. I mean, that's not close, right? If it was like 10-2 or 20-2, that'd be one thing, but man, that's drastic. And some of the home runs that I've seen this year, just going to 4 or 5 games, I mean, some of these balls are opposite field, just bombs.
It makes the one good thing about it though, Patrick. It makes my college stats look a little bit better. Just because it's almost that inflation going on right now with everybody.
It makes mine look worse though as a hitter.
Yeah, no, the hitters not so much. You only hit 5 home runs when you look on everybody's
right
team now, and they have someone with 20 double-digit home runs. It's crazy.
When you're out recruiting, watching pitchers. This is a question I was thinking of when I was out at the Big Ten tournament a couple of weekends ago. There's this huge obsession with velocity right now where it's like, man, if you don't throw 95, like you can't play D1 baseball or whatever it is. And it's like, I'm at the Big Ten tournament. I think I saw the highest pitch the entire week was 92. But all these guys are throwing strikes. They got a good slider. They're good pitchability, all that stuff. So when you're out watching pitchers, how much of it is them just looking the part of being projectable? And then on top of that, maybe they have some velocity and then command too. So maybe they're 86 to 88, but they're projectable and they can command the ball versus just trying to throw 94, 95. And I just don't see a ton of that in the college game.
Yeah, no, I think the velocity used to really catch everybody's eye, but nowadays everybody throws 90. If you're not at 90, you'll get to 90 at some point in your career. So I think it's a fine line between some of the guys now that are 95 to 97. Okay, you can take chances on them if they're not completely in the zone, but it's those guys that are upper 80s to 90s have to really be able to command the zone, throw a lot of strikes. And I think those are the guys that are having success in college. And then a lot of times those guys in college will go up to the big leagues and start throwing harder and harder. I think it's from the specialized training that they're doing, but I definitely think the command piece of it comes first. And that's what, the best pitchers in college are walking the least amount of hitters, and then you get some of the arms like you had on Tennessee who had elite command and could also had, elite stuff, to throw the ball mid 90s. And that's when you see, striking out close to 2 guys an inning. You start to see that the dominance of it. For me, and I think college baseball is in the same way, is much rather go down with a guy that's throwing it over the plate than a guy that's spraying it all over the place. Like that works in college so much more. You can have success in the college if you can put it over the plate, even if you have average stuff. You might not have, those magical years or, play a long time, but you'll have a good college career.
How important is body type to you when you're evaluating a pitcher?
I think it's really important. I think the body type, but also the movements of the body. I think you can be a bigger kid, you can be maybe a little bit out of shape, but if your body moves really well, then at least you have a baseline to work with. I think if you're athletic enough, it's easier for you to make adjustments if you need to, but also, if you need to clean up your body, if you need to get stronger. I think you fall into a pattern where you have a guy that can't move well at all, and he's a little bit bigger, and then you try to get him in really good shape. A lot of times his body starts breaking down because it can't handle it. It doesn't have the athleticism to handle the changes. And I think there's some guys that, you can see it in the MLB, they don't have great bodies and they still have a lot of success. There's some guys just have a knack for getting guys out. So I think that has to go into it as well. I mean, it'd be nice to have the old, Stanford to Rice, the Texas, kids back in the day, like in the 90s to early 2000s that were all 6'4", 6'5", and, just put together going out there. I remember watching those guys at the College World Series, but not everybody can have those. And I think it's finding guys that can really compete and really play the game of baseball and love to play the game of baseball that have the most success, just gamers that will make sacrifices in their daily life because of baseball. I see those type of kids taking to the next level. And if it is a kid that might not have the best body, but he has everything else, he's going to go a long ways. And he's the guy that you're going to want on the mound rather than the guy that looks the part that doesn't really like baseball or doesn't really have it figured out.
How many times do you watch a player before you're like, okay, I'm in? Because you mentioned right there, part of it is just loving the game. And I assume that you could go to a game. If a kid does great, he's going to seem like he loves the game, right? Because he's having a great game, great outing. Yep. Everyone's happy. So is there a certain amount of times on average you watch a kid before you're like, okay, I'm in, let's make him an offer?
There's sometimes we'll see a kid 3-4 times, try to get to know him. And then there's sometimes, the other day I was out watching a game. I saw a kid. I was like, all right, let's do it. Like, if we wait, he's going to be gone. He's going to be somewhere else. Like, that's what I think has a lot of success at college level. And that's what I kind of want to work with. So there's times like that. But there is times, the majority of it is seeing a guy multiple times, getting to know him, kind of finding out what clicks with him, what's his it factor, what makes him go, what he's going to be like in the locker room, what he's going to be like when he's on the field with our guys. I tell recruits all the time, tell parents all the time is, we can miss on the best player. May say we miss on a really good player and he goes and plays for, FIU or Rice. He might come and, he might beat us one time in a weekend, but if we bring the wrong player in the locker room, he's going to beat us every single day. Right. So we can walk away from really, really good talent if we don't think it's a good fit with our personalities or the rest of our team. And he'll go play somewhere and he might have a lot of success somewhere and he might come in and he might pitch on Friday night and beat us that one game. But if we bring that wrong kid in the locker room, it's going to be every single day when we're at practice. It's going to hurt the culture. It's going to hurt, the program that Coach McCormack has put together here, and the culture and the winning traditions. It take away from all that.
Awesome. Brady, appreciate you coming on, man. It's been a lot of fun. I'm jealous you're down in Florida. Well, maybe not jealous this time of year, but in the wintertime for sure, I'm gonna be very jealous of you. But again, man, I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, Patrick, thank you. I appreciate you having me on here.